Good afternoon, friends, and good afternoon, students. My name is Avinash. So, I'm teaching here the environment, and ecology subject in detail. The subject in detail we are going to discuss. So, in the previous classes, we discussed about the syllabus analysis and what is the need and importance of studying this particular subject. Already I told you this is the starting class. You can take it as a starting class. We are just entering into the subject of environment and ecology. So as part of this subject, when you are studying or taking up one subject, how you should move through that particular subject, how you should navigate through that particular subject. You should go by the list of topics or the list of contents or the table of contents, and these are the entire subject of environment and ecology can be divided into 20 parts, 20 subparts you can divide, and in this 20 subparts, I will cover the entire subject of environment and ecology. I will cover the entire subject of environment and ecology. It will take nearly 30 to 35 hours. It will take nearly 30 to 35 hours, to cover all these topics. So these are all scientifically arranged topics, where the easy topics were arranged first, and the difficult and theoretical topics, they are arranged at the end. Why? Because once you understand the easy topics with examples, then you can easily understand some of the scientific and the difficult topics in this particular subject of environment and ecology. So friends, try to understand here the list of topics. I will give you a brief overview, and why I included this particular topics in this particular subject. And friends, also one more thing, I will show you the reference book for all these topics. The reference book, here it is, we have this the reference book is this. From this book I am teaching this entire topic, the Rajgopalan, Environment and Ecology by Rajgopalan. So Rajgopalan sir, he is professor of the IIT Chennai, and he wrote a very beautiful book on environment and ecology, Oak Bridge publication. It's a very good book. It will be useful it will cover the MCQs and it will also cover take care of your writing skills also. So this is the best book. From this book only I'm covering these particular topics. So this is the most scientific way of arrangement of the topics in the subject of environment and ecology. So friends, as said earlier, we will cover all these topics in 30 hours, and in the 30 hours you will able to understand the entire environment and ecology. Try to understand this very clearly. I am teaching this for as per the UPSC standards. As per the UPSC standards, I am teaching this particular thing, subject of environment and ecology. If you prepare for this subject in the UPSC standard, then obviously it is easy to attempt any question, whether it is in the prelims or mains, in the TSPSC Group 1, Group 2, Group 3 examinations conducted by the Telangana state government. But my subject will be at the UPSC standard only. Understand that very clearly. Now see here, as part of the list of topics, I will just give a brief overview about this particular list of topics. So see here, as part of introduction, so already we have discussed about in the previous sessions, the three case studies. Do you remember the particular three case studies? One case study on the mangrove ecosystem and the role of mangrove ecosystem in protecting the people's life from the tsunami and the tropical cyclones. Then I discussed about the impact of diclofenac drug on the vulture population, bird, and how it has led to the negative impact on the man or the humans in the society. That is, I discussed in the previous sessions of this particular environment subject analysis. And third case study, I discussed about this particular the Sagar Island, the threats faced by the islands at the global level. Specifically, I took the example of the Sagar Island in India, and how the global warming and melting of the polar ice caps is leading to the erosion of the islands and creating the climate refugees. So friends, understand here very clearly this subject of environment and ecology. You need to understand with these three case studies. You should get some interest. You should get some application oriented mind regarding this particular subject. That why I am reading this particular subject, where it will be useful in the real life situation, and how as a future administrator I can make this particular knowledge of this subject to protect the lives of the people and to protect the economy of our country and the state. This is how you should think. Align your thinking when you are reading such subjects for the competitive examinations. So this is the friends, this is the thing here about the introduction. I already covered this particular thing, so no need of the thing here is only one. Okay, the main important point I want to stress is that the subject and its importance and its application, okay, in the real life situations. So that is the thing here. So don't read that mangrove. Okay, mangrove is a halophytic vegetation. Okay, it is okay, it exhibits viviparity mode of reproduction. It has tilt roots, pneumatophores, aerial roots. Okay, that is subject part. But exactly how the mangroves are useful to the humanity, how the mangroves will be useful in overcoming the natural disasters. Okay, how we should protect them, how we should preserve them, so that our future generations will also be saved from these natural disasters like tsunamis and other tropical cyclones and the storm surges impacts. So that is what the application level, is all about. Already we have discussed that in the introduction part, so no need of again repeating the same thing again. If anybody is missing, please go to the previous class of mine on environment ecology, and you will get this particular introduction, 3 case studies discussion about why we should study this particular subject. So that is simple. Okay, that part is done. Now, second, slowly I will take you to the subject. Once you are navigating to the each and every part, okay, you will be entering into the most difficult parts. In my view, this side of the board contains easy topics which everybody can understand. And this side of the topic contains somewhat difficult topics which require certain analysis, which require certain insightfulness, okay, which require certain understanding of the facts at the international level and also at the national level, that is at the Indian government level or India level. So this side is easy part, that side is difficult part. Now coming to the protected area, the topic called as Protected Area Network of India. Now I will give a brief overview, just a brief overview. After brief overview, I will take each and every topic. I will go much more deeper analysis into that particular individual topic. So understand here, Protected Area Network of India. So in the name itself it is there, okay, Protected Area Network of India. It talks about how to protect the biodiversity in India, and how to conserve the biodiversity in India. And what are the various steps taken by the Indian government, okay, to protect and conserve the biodiversity. So this topic of Protected Area Network, it discusses about the 4 types of protected areas. In India. So what are those 4 types of protected areas, okay, that are created by the government of India? First one is called as national parks. Okay, second one is called as wildlife sanctuaries. Third is called as conservation reserves. Okay. Fourth is called as community reserves. So understand here very clearly, the Protected Area Network of India consists of 4 types of protected areas, which were created by the government of India under Wildlife Protection Act 1972. So how many total number of protected areas are there in India? Combinedly we have the 871 protected areas in India. That is total number of national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, conservation reserves, community reserves, and they occupy 5.03% of the total geographical area of India. Understand that very clearly. So Protected Area Network of India, very simple. The government of India has come out with the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. It has designated various areas, forest areas as protected areas. Now, based on the amount of wildlife, based on the threats faced by the wildlife, based on the number of tribal people, okay, and their lives linked with the forests, okay, based on that they have categorized it into 4 types: national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, conservation reserves, community reserves. So totally we have 871 protected areas covering 5.03% of the geographical area of India. What is their main purpose? To protect and conserve the biodiversity in India, Okay, and the protection and conservation of biodiversity is in situ, and the protection and conservation of biodiversity is in situ. So what is this in situ biodiversity conservation? Wherever you have particular species of plant or animal, you create a protected area there and you protect it, conserve it. That is called as in situ biodiversity conservation. What is the opposite? That is the ex situ biodiversity conservation. You take a particular plant or animal species from its original habitat to some other place, then you take care of it, you take care of the needs of that particular creature, that you call it as ex situ conservation, okay, of biodiversity. So ex situ means you can take one threatened plant species, you can just keep it in a botanical garden, protect it, conserve it, nurture it. You can take an endangered species of animal, you can just keep it in a zoological garden or a zoo, then protect it, conserve it. That is ex situ. In situ means the place where that particular plant and animal is living, you create a protected area there, you protect it, conserve it in the natural environment. Natural environment, that is in situ biodiversity protection. Protected area network of India, 4 are there. Remember this. Again I will discuss about the national parks, how they are created, okay, which act is responsible for the creation of the national parks, how many are there, which state is having maximum, okay, all those things we'll discuss as part of the in detail analysis. Next, marine national parks. So marine national parks, again very simple. See here, all these protected areas we are creating on the land, we are creating on the terrestrial area or the land, whereas marine national park we create in the, okay, marine areas or in the ocean areas. That is called as the marine national parks. Here we discuss the things, some aspects, some facts, and where are they located, some important points. After seeing these two topics, protected area network of India, that is the protected areas created on the land, marine national parks, the protected areas created on the marine areas, created in the marine areas, we see some of the important national parks that are asked in various examinations, okay, in throughout the India, whether it is UPSC prelims, whether it is CDS, NDA or any other state level group 1 examination like that, okay, so that you will get an idea. I will give a map and I will discuss which questions were asked. After that we see about the important bird and biodiversity. See here, bird and biodiversity areas. So birds, already we discussed how the birds are important in entire natural environment. If you are able to, if you are not able to protect one single bird, okay, what kind of consequences it will have. And humans, we have seen in case of this particular vulture bird, which is being affected by the diclofenac, the anti-inflammatory, okay, cattle, okay, vaccine on the drug. So see here, important bird and biodiversity areas. So this is a unique concept. It is not by the Indian government, but supported by the Indian government. The concept is created or given by the Conservation BirdLife International. BirdLife International, a international organization which is working for the protection and conservation of the birds at the international levels. Okay, but the government of India is giving full support to this important bird and biodiversity areas. So what are these areas? These are the areas in India where the migratory birds will come there, stay there, live there, okay, then they, okay, made their, they give birth to the new offsprings and they protect them, nurture them and take back with them to their original lands. That is called as those places where these migratory birds are coming and okay, passing through all this sequence of activities. This is called as important bird and biodiversity areas. Like we have the Koleru, okay, lake bird area, okay, like we have this particular Nelapattu bird area, like we have this particular Flamingo Park in Gujarat, okay, like the various bird and biodiversity areas are there. It's a simple topic, it's a simple topic. I told you this side is simple, that side is difficult. Now, after the Marine National Park important bird and biodiversity areas, we see about this particular biodiversity hotspots. We see about this particular concept of biodiversity hotspots. So what are these biodiversity hotspots? So the concept of biodiversity hotspot, okay, it is given by the famous environmentalist called as Norman Mayer's biodiversity hotspot. So this person, while he is doing his research at a global level, he has identified the places on the planet Earth which are nurturing the biodiversity in a great, okay, to a greater extent. Okay, that areas Norman Mayer's okay, the environmentalist and the evolutionary biologist, he named those places on the planet Earth as the biodiversity hotspots. And these biodiversity hotspots, there are 36 on the planet Earth. Out of these 36, India has the two biodiversity hotspots. One is the Western Ghats and the Sri Lanka biodiversity hotspot. Second is the Northeast and the Indo-Malaya. Northeast and Indo-Burman. Sorry, it is the Indo-Burman. Northeast and Indo-Burman biodiversity hotspot. So we will discuss that biodiversity hotspot. What is the definition of biodiversity hotspot? Who given it? Okay. What are the 36 biodiversity hotspots on the planet? Two in India. What is the importance of two biodiversity hotspots in India? Like we have Western Ghats is a biodiversity hotspot. You know, Western Ghats is the water tower of the peninsular India. The entire Western Ghats is very rich in biodiversity. You have a lot of evergreen forests there. Okay, you have a lot of the biodiversity there. Okay, you have a unique species of monkeys. Okay, for example, the lion-tailed macaque, the monkey species living in this particular Western Ghats biodiversity hotspot. Then you have this particular black-purple frog species. Black-purple frog species. This species, it originated way back some 5,000 to 6,000 years ago and was staying in this particular Western Ghats from that particular time period. And that species, the unique species, are staying in this particular biodiversity hotspots areas. There are two, we'll discuss them in detail. And the criteria for declaring a particular place as a biodiversity hotspot. Very, very important. So after that, we'll see the UNESCO World Natural Heritage Sites. So you know what the organization called as UNESCO, United Nations Education, Scientific and Cultural Organization. One of the organization working under the United Nations. So this UNESCO, what it will do is that it will declare the World Heritage Sites. World Heritage Sites in three segments. One is called as the natural segment. Second is called as the cultural segment. Third is called as mixed segment. Mixed means they have natural plus cultural aspects. UNESCO declares the World Heritage Sites in three segments. One is natural, second is cultural, third is mixed. Okay, that is having both natural and cultural heritage sites. If you take this particular world, we should discuss about the World Natural Heritage Sites in India. World Natural Heritage Sites in India. Why? Because we are concerned with only the natural ecosystems and the biodiversity. So there are 7 are there in India, and we have one mixed heritage site in India. We will discuss what is the definition of a World Heritage Site, what are the criteria for declaration of a World Heritage Site. 4 criteria are there. Okay, what we should do to protect and conserve the World Heritage Sites. What is the role of Indian government? What Indian government will exactly do? It will identify and nominate. Further, the UNESCO World Heritage Committee will declare. They give certain funding. They give certain scientific support. Okay, all this we discuss as part of the World Natural Heritage Sites. 7 are there in India. Unique species living there, and the importance of this particular thing. UNESCO, next we have UNESCO Biosphere Reserve. So what is this UNESCO Biosphere Reserve? So Biosphere Reserves, Biosphere Reserves, life sphere, geographical region, reserve means in this particular geographical region you have a reservoir of the life form. So this is called as UNESCO Biosphere Reserves. So the concept of UNESCO Biosphere Reserve again given by the UNESCO, same organization. 18 are there. In that, few of them are part of the Man and Biosphere Reserve program. We'll discuss them in detail. What are the criteria for declaring a biosphere reserve? Okay, at a particular place. Okay, where they are located, in which state they are located, and what are the various species, unique species living there. So all those things we discuss as part of the UNESCO Biosphere Reserve concept. After that, we have something like ecologically sensitive areas concept. The concept of ecologically sensitive areas is an extension of this particular protected area network of India concept. So ecologically sensitive areas, very simple topic, but there are certain small differences when it compared to the protected area network of India. So generally the ecologically sensitive areas, they are declared around the national parks and wildlife sanctuaries. Ecologically sensitive areas are declared. Why they are declared? What is the need and necessity for declaring the ecologically sensitive areas? We will discuss as part of this ecologically sensitive areas topic, and which law is responsible for declaring the ecologically sensitive areas, that also we discuss. So after that we discuss about the IUCN Red Data Book. IUCN Red Data Book. So what is IUCN? International Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources. International Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources. So it's an international environmental NGO. It's an international environmental NGO which is concerned with the scientific assessment of the life forms on the planet Earth. Scientific assessment of the life forms on the planet Earth. So IUCN is a scientific organization and it's the world's largest environmental related scientific organization. Understand that very clearly. What IUCN will do? It will assess the status of life forms on the planet Earth, including the plants, animals, fungi and other microorganisms, and based on their scientific level of assessment, they categorize these life forms at various threat levels in the Red Data Book. So if any of the species got extinct from the planet Earth, they declare it as extinct. If any of the species has it is not extinct, but there is a scientific evidence that the species might present inside the forest area, that they declare it as extinct in the wild. If any of the species is facing any severe threats and there is a 190% chance of that particular species becoming extinct in the near future, they declare it as critically endangered species. Like that, they release this particular IUCN Red Data Book in the extinct category: extinct in the wild, critically endangered, vulnerable, endangered, near threatened. All these categories are there. We'll discuss this as part of the Red Data Book of IUCN in detail. Each category we discuss with the example. What is the meaning of that particular category? We see that. For example, sometimes we see in the newspaper that this particular the tiger in India is an endangered species. The Indian tiger is an endangered species. So what do you mean by the word endangered? Exactly what do you mean by the word endangered? According to the IUCN Red Data Book. So what are the other Indian animals that are part of this particular IUCN Red Data Book? We'll see in detail. So mangroves. So in the first case study I discussed about the importance of the mangroves. So here we go for an in-depth study of the mangroves. Why? Because up to here you can expect the multiple choice question. From 10th section you can expect the this particular MCQs, mains, answer writing questions in the examination. So understand here very clearly, after each and every topic we will see the previous exam questions also, questions also from various examinations. So mangroves. So what are these mangroves? Just now I discussed, mangroves are the halophytic vegetation, that is salt tolerant vegetation. They exist in the coastal areas. They are able to withstand the extreme and difficult conditions like harsh temperatures and continuous sea wave action and anaerobic. Anaerobic means absence of oxygen conditions. So these are the called as mangroves. They are very unique species and they are much more efficient in carbon sequestration. Understand that very clearly. They trap more amount of CO2. Into their bodies. And they are home to a lot of biodiversity. I told you, birds, reptiles, fishes, frogs, snakes, crocodiles, all of them, they make the mangroves as their home. And they have very strong root systems and they have aerial root system which are nothing but an adaptation to the extreme or difficult conditions in which they are living. So this is about the mangroves. We'll discuss them. What are mangroves? Where mangroves are located? What is the importance of the mangroves? What are the threats to the mangroves? What are the negatives of the mangroves? Where the mangroves are located in India? We discuss about the formation of the Sundarban mangroves, the world's largest continuous stretch of mangrove ecosystem on the planet Earth. How it is formed? What are the facts associated with it? What conditions facilitated the formation of the mangroves? Sundarban mangroves. What the government of India is doing to protect and conserve the mangroves. What the CRZ, Coastal Regulation Zone Notification 2017, latest notification, saying about the mangroves. How it is coming out with the various rules to protect and conserve the mangroves in the India. So that we see as part of the mangroves topic. It's a very big topic. You can expect a mains question in the UPSC and also in the TSPSC mains group 1. So like that, okay. You can also expect the question in the interview also. So that is the thing here, okay. How mangroves are helpful for the humanity? Can you explain about that in detail? Like that they will ask, okay. So this is the thing here, okay, about the mangroves. If you there is a unique special feature of this particular tree species mangroves. If you cut any tree, you can observe the growth rings. You can observe the growth rings inside that particular tree. The growth rings, okay, they represent the age of that particular tree. They represent the age of that particular tree. They also represent the brown color growth ring. They are nothing but the carbon. They are nothing but the carbon which the tree has taken from the atmosphere. So that carbon, you take that particular, extract that carbon, and you go for C14 carbon dating. Then you can come to know the exact age of that particular tree. So, but the thing about the mangroves is that the growth rings are totally absent in the mangroves. The growth rings are totally absent in the mangroves. Understand that very clearly. Now, where that carbon is going? Where that carbon is going? The carbon is going directly from the roots into the soil of this particular, okay, into the soil. This is about the mangroves. We discussed that, and we have this particular mangrove genetic research center at the Odisha. Okay, that also we discussed. Mangroves, wetlands. So what are these wetlands? Wetlands are simply the land surfaces that are covered with water for more than 8 months in a year. For more than 8 months in a year. So wetlands, it can be a lake, it can be a pond, it can be a river, it can be a flowing river. So all these are wetlands. So wetlands, they have importance. They provide water, they provide, they hold biodiversity, they are home to migratory birds. Like that we see what are the wetlands, okay. Then we have the threats to the wetlands. Then we see the Ramsar Convention on the wetlands of international importance. What is Montreal's record? What is Wetland International? Okay, how many Ramsar wetlands are there from India on the Ramsar Convention list? Okay, 26 plus 7 recently, Sundarbans, and recently they have added 10 more. So totally 37 Ramsar wetlands are there in India. So we discussed that. We discussed about the wetland rules. Okay, 2010. We discussed about the new wetland rules 2017 in detail about the wetlands. Okay, and the previous questions on the wetlands. So what are the wetlands which are fed by various rivers in India? Through map we will see. Understand that very clearly. It's a very big topic. Okay, we will see it. Coral reefs. So next is coral reefs. So what are these coral reefs? So from here the difficult topics will start. Coral reefs. Coral reefs in Telugu you call it as Pagadapu Dibbalu. Pagadapu Dibbalu. So the coral reefs, they are present in the ocean ecosystem. They are present in the marine areas. We have to see the various aspects related to the coral reefs. Exactly how coral reefs are formed. Okay, what is the relationship, symbiotic relationship between the zooxanthellae algae and the polyp, the single cellular marine organism, marine organism polyp and the zooxanthellae. What is the relation between them, and how their relation has led to the formation of the coral reefs? Okay, what is the importance of the coral reefs? They are source of biodiversity. Okay, lot of marine creatures make the coral reefs as their home. They are source of, they sequester large amount of CO2 from the atmosphere. Okay, like that many are there. Okay, they are home for a wide variety of marine biodiversity. Okay, like that various importance of the coral reefs are there. What are the threats faced by the coral reefs? Okay, the biggest threat to the coral reefs is coral bleaching. Coral bleaching. So why the coral bleaching is happening? What is the link between the global warming and the coral bleaching? Okay, what are the steps taken at the international level for the protection and conservation of the coral reefs? Okay, then what is the coral triangle? Where the coral triangle is located on the planet Earth? Okay, where are coral reefs present in India? What is the latest and the best thing that is done by India, which no country has done in the protection, for the protection and conservation of the coral reefs? What the India has done? Okay, so which is accepted at the global level. It's the greatest achievement when it comes to the protection and coral reefs and conservation of coral reefs at the global level. At the global level, coral reefs. Okay, we'll see that. Okay, then what are the steps taken by the Indian government to protect and conserve the coral reefs? Okay, so all these things we will StatCor conference. Okay, coral triangle. Okay, all these things, red corals, brain corals. Okay, all these things we will see as part of the coral reefs. This part is very important here, coral reefs. Indian environmental laws and rules. Now see here. So Indian environmental laws and rules. So as part of this Indian environmental laws and rules, what we'll do is that we discuss about nearly 13 environmental laws and rules are there which are discussing or talking about the protection and conservation of environment and biodiversity in India. For example, we start with this particular, the oldest environmental act in India, the Forest Act of 1927. Forest Act of 1927. What it is saying about the forest, conservation of forest, protection of forest, and how it is discriminating the tribals who are living in the forest. We see about the various other environmental laws, okay, as part of this particular thing. Like we have National Biodiversity Act, NGT Act, Wildlife Protection Act, like many are there. We will see solid waste management rules, plastic waste management rules, biomedical waste management rules. Okay, a lot of acts are there. We'll see them in detail. Air Pollution Act, Water Pollution Act, Forest Conservation Act, CAMPA Act, Compensatory Afforestation Management and Planning Authority, CAMPA Act. Like that, many are there. We'll discuss. Then after that, we'll see the Indian environmental organizations. Nearly 25 organizations are there. Like we have the Botanical Survey of India for protection, ex situ protection of the plant species. Geological Survey of India, Central Zoo Authority, Wildlife Crime Control Bureau, okay, National Board for Wildlife, National Tiger Conservation Authority, okay, we have this particular, okay, Bombay Natural History Society, we have this particular Institute of Forestry Research and Education, we have Wildlife Institute of India, we have Forest Research Institute, we have Forest, okay, Forest Wildlife Institute. Like that, various environmental organizations are there, nearly 25 are there. We'll discuss them in detail. Okay. Then we have international conventions, nearly 20 conventions are there, okay, which are concerned with the protection and conservation of the environment and the biodiversity. So for example, for the, okay, to overcome the problem of mercury, and the impact of mercury on the marine life forms, we have something like Minamata Convention. So Minamata Convention is all about, okay, totally eliminating the mercury from planet Earth and its usage in various industrial processes and other processes. So what is this Minamata Convention? Whether India signed this particular convention or not. When it was signed, when it was adopted, okay, is it a legally binding convention? What are the aims and objectives? What are the programs under the Minamata Convention? So like that we will see. For example, if you take the convention related to the protection and conservation of ozone layer, we have the Vienna Convention for the protection and conservation of ozone layer. We have the Montreal Protocol on the substances that deplete the ozone layer. We have this Kigali Agreement for phasing out of the HFCs, hydrofluorocarbons, that are affecting the ozone layer. But before that, just we should not read simply the, okay, Vienna Convention 1985, it is aim is to protect and conserve the ozone layer. No, not like that. Since you are writing for the mains, okay, this subject is somewhat, we have to understand the subject in detail. You have to start the, okay, discussion from the origin of the ozone layer, exactly how ozone layer was formed in the Earth's atmosphere, when it happened, what is the process, okay, photolysis reaction, how it has happened, okay, how the oxygen has came into the Earth's atmosphere, okay, from plants, and after the formation of ozone layer, okay, how the other species got evolved on the planet Earth, like other, okay, higher mammals and including the humans. What are the present threats faced by to this particular ozone layer? Who are the scientists who did the research on the ozone layer? Who is the first person to discover the ozone hole? Okay, what is the instrument that measures the ozone in the atmosphere? Okay, so all these things we discuss as part of the ozone layer before we discuss about the Vienna Convention. And what are the list of ozone depleting substances? Okay, we have the chlorofluorocarbons, okay, methyl, okay, chloroform, okay, we have various other things are there, okay, whether they are eliminated at the global level, whether India eliminated any of this, okay, ODS. So all this we discuss as part of the international conventions. Okay, we have Antarctica Treaty, okay, we have a lot of things are there. We discuss nearly 20 are there, but all of them they are related with the protection and conservation of environment. After that we have international organizations like Wildlife Trust of India, okay, we have various international organizations. Are there, like WWF, okay, Worldwide Fund for Nature and Natural Resources. Like that, 20 are there. We list them. We discuss them. We discuss the aims and objectives, how India is benefiting from them. Global warming and climate change. Here we discuss about the technical aspects. Okay, what is the role of CO2? Okay, in allowing the incoming solar radiation and stopping the outgoing, okay, terrestrial radiation. How global warming is leading to the climate change, how it is altering the Earth's climate, and what are the impacts. And finally, the solution to the problem of global warming and climate change and the protection of environment, that is the sustainable development. The concept of sustainable development we discussed from 1952 from the UN, from publication of a book called as the Silent Spring by Rachel Carlson. From there we discuss up to the 2020 about the sustainable development. Okay, that is the solution for global warming and climate change. We discuss about the UN Sustainable Development Goals that are 17 in number. And after that we go to the purely theoretical concepts on environment and ecology, that is the food chain, food web, ecological pyramids, biogeochemical cycles like water cycle, carbon cycle, oxygen cycle, sulfur cycle, nitrogen cycle, phosphorus cycle. Okay, like that we discuss about the ecosystems, the factors influencing the ecosystems, what is ecoline, ecotone, ecozone. So all these technical aspects, purely theoretical aspects, we discuss as part of the purely theoretical concepts. Food chains, food web, ecological pyramids, biosphere, environment, all the ecology, okay, autoecology, synecology, like that many are there we discuss as part of the purely theoretical concepts. Then species specific projects. Here it is very important. So here we discuss about the Project Tiger 1972. We discuss in detail about the latest project, okay, tiger population assessment of tigers in India. We discuss about the Project Crocodile. We discuss about the Project Godawan. We discuss about the Project Gharial. We discuss about the Project Musk Deer. Okay, we discuss about the Project Dole Harina. So like that various Project Asiatic Land. Okay, we discuss about the Project Elephant. We discuss about the Project Snow Leopard. Okay, like that various species specific projects within the Indian context we discuss here. So once it is done, we discuss the previous questions also. We discuss the previous, okay, MCQ questions also we discuss. So please try to understand here. Whoever subscribed to this particular course, okay, for the group 1, okay, students for the mains part. So what I will do is that I will give around 30 to 40 questions also. So if you can understand these topics, attend these classes in the app, Ashoka Academy app, Ashoka Telangana Academy app, complete the course. It is about 30 hours, 30 to 35 hours. I will tell the topics in detail. Please utilize this chance. Complete the entire course. It will be useful for other competitive exams also conducted by the TSPSC and other, okay, public service commissions. So please attend this particular class. If you want to join this particular class, this is how we proceed. If you join from the day 1, we will proceed to each and every topic in a step-by-step manner. There is no deviation. There will be no deviation. I will discuss all these topics. Okay, please listen to. If you subscribe, we go in this particular manner. We complete the course 30 to 35 hours. It is done. What are the advantages? I will teach this particular subject in the UPSC standard. You will be benefiting. If you write the UPSC exam, you will be benefiting. If you write the TSPSC Group 1 Prelims exam, and you can attempt this particular 50-mark paper in the Group 1 Mains very easily. And if you understand all these things, there is a greater chance of asking a question in the essay of the TSPSC Group 1 Mains, where with this particular knowledge you can write a very beautiful essay for 50 marks. Moreover, all the things whichever we are discussing will be useful for your interview also. So understand this. So this is, friends, so this is how we proceed in this particular environment and ecology subject. So you subscribe to this particular subject if you want, okay, in the Telangana Ashoka Academy app. Okay, we will keep very, okay, moderate price we will keep for the students during the COVID situation. In this particular situation, you please, okay, try to understand this particular subject. See the videos. If you have any doubts, you call to the Ashok sir, you call to me directly. We give our numbers in this particular video message. Okay, you please contact us. If you have any doubts, you can contact us openly. There is nothing like, okay, everything is transparent here. So please utilize this chance. Okay, please subscribe to this channel and subscribe to this app. Join this course, it will be useful. Definitely, there is no doubt about that. We go accordingly. We go according to this plan. So thank you, students. Thank you very much and happy learning. Bye bye.